Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Robin Craig Live. I'm Robin Craig, your host for the next 60 minutes, and I really appreciate your presence because tonight we are talking about a really serious topic: sexual assault. It's something that so needs to be discussed, but people are afraid of it. And even in our society where we talk about everything, there are some topics that we just feel better about sweeping under the rug, but that doesn't help anybody. So I'm going to be talking to Ed Manning, who goes by the name of Fuzzy. Isn't that cute? Fuzzy Manning. I'll be talking to him in just a few minutes, but first, it's time for the Critter Update. I am excited to say that the big, terrible gray cat that's been taunting my cat Indigo Sherry, who's sitting on the arm of my chair right now, it has not been back. I'm wondering, last week I remember I told you how it woke me up at 12:30 in the morning and making all these screeching sounds on the other side of a glass sliding door with my cat on the inside. And I somehow thought to get a flashlight and I shined it in the cat's eyes until it started blinking and then it just walked away. So I don't know if that did the trick. If it comes back, I'm going to do it again. But nothing has happened in that regard and no activity in the attic. So what I have for you for the critter update is I rescued a frog out of the pool this week. I always feel so happy when I do that. And it's kind of funny because on this particular day, I was inside my room and I was looking out the window and I saw that little ripple of water that looks like when you throw a rock or something in. And I thought something just went in the pool. So I dashed out the door and it was a little frog. And even though they can swim, they're not able to get out of the pool and eventually they will drown. So I got my net and I rescued a frog and everything's beautiful. Isn't that great? I love that. Now, tonight, I am going to be giving away another bag of my favorite guilt-free chips, as I call them, Bean Eatos. You can buy these at Whole Foods, Central Market, some Kroger stores, some Randall stores, some health food stores. You just have to ask for them. But they have no corn, no potatoes, no gluten, no wheat, no trans fats. They are low glycemic, which is really important if you're working at regulating your blood sugar. And they've got protein and they are delicious. In addition to everything else, they're delicious. So tonight, I'm going to be giving away a case of Bean Eatos. And I always like for you guys to get the big bag. They say there are 6 servings in here, but everybody that has reported back to me after winning says they had to eat at least half a bag before they could stop, which technically is 3 servings, but that's okay because they're so good and they're made out of beans. So my favorite are the black beans chipotle barbecue flavor. So tonight somebody's going to win. Now last week's winner was Kathleen Jenkins in the Woodlands, Texas. She has not received them yet, but I told her that she won, and she is so excited. She does not know what to do with herself. Now, I also want to acknowledge our tornado victims. I talked about them last week in Ohio, Missouri, Kentucky, Indiana, I think Tennessee, a whole number of states were suffering from a gigantic number of tornadoes. And it was just so sad to hear of how many people were killed and how many were injured. And some people had just rebuilt their house from the tornadoes that came prior to this last incident. So it's just heartbreaking. So if anybody is able to help anybody or donate, or if you have clothing, the Red Cross is always really great in times of disaster. It would be really great for you guys to have a chance to donate. And if you're really excited about Robin Craig Live, I can certainly use your support for the show. And you can go to my website to make a donation at robincraigdirect.com. There's a little donations page and you can pay with any credit card on PayPal. So if you'd like to support the show, any amount is appreciated. Believe me, there is no amount too small. You guys know I'm in my 3rd year of production and I work really, really hard on this show and I do everything. I'm a one-girl show. So any support that you can give me in that regard, kudos and a big thumbs up. And thanks again to Terry and to Julia who made a donation last time. So much appreciated. Okay, guys. Now, in case we start talking and I don't announce next week's show, I think a lot of you guys know Brandy Reyna, and we're talking about unwedded widows. And this is another really interesting topic. You may be engaged, as Brandy was, or have a life partner, someone that you thought you were going to be with forever, but people discount you as being a widow because technically the definition says you're not a widow. You're supposed to be married for that, but it doesn't mean you're not suffering a lot of the same symptoms. So I hope that you'll tune in next week to hear Brandy talking about the unwedded widows. Now, if you missed last week, there's a wonderful website that is for survivors of fallen service members. It is goldstarfamilyregistry.com, and it's a beautiful way for your loved one to be remembered and also to pay tribute to the service that they gave to our country. I'm so appreciative of everybody in the military. And as a matter of fact, my guest tonight, Fuzzy Manning, is a Vietnam veteran. And I'm just so touched because, you know, I think all of us have heard enough stories by now to realize all the sacrifices that have been made on our behalf. And even last week, I talked about a little posting that I saw on Facebook that I shared on my wall. And it was a photograph of a bicycle where a guy went off to the military. I think it was in 1914. And he left his bicycle chained around a tree. Unfortunately, the soldier never came home. But his family did not want to remove the bike. So as the tree kept growing, the bike was elevated off the ground and the tree started to grow around it. So you see the handlebars and the front tire in the front, and then you see the back part and the back tire. And it was just so heartrending to think about that. And there's so many reminders, and we can never forget about our military people and what they mean to us. And we've got a lot of people fighting for us right now. So we always want to remember them and do everything that we can to stay in contact with and to support the people in the military and to remember when they come home, the transition is horrendous and we need to be there for them and we need to talk to them and say things like, how are you doing? And I want the real answer, not just that calculated, fine answer that we are all conditioned to give. So I see that the chat room is heating up. Nyla, I'm glad to see you. And Doug, I'm glad to see you. I've already been talking with Amy and Frida and Sandy, and I'm sure more people will join us as the evening progresses. But I do think it is time to get Fuzzy on. But first, one more thing. I did want to share a story that I read. It was in the Associated Press, and it was an incident that happened in Conway, Arkansas. There was an Arkansas woman who adopted her granddaughter after the grandmother's son died, and he was killed in Iraq. And the grandmother just obviously was not dealing with her pain and did not seek the needed help that she should have gotten. She stabbed the 7-year-old girl in the chest, and then she set fire to their home in an apparent murder suicide. Her name was Janice Robbins. She was 63, and she left a suicide note in her pickup truck before killing her granddaughter, Abby Robbins, and herself. They said that she had stabbed the girl in the chest, but it was the smoke from the fire that killed both the little girl and her grandmother. The coroner was able to give us that information. They said that they found gas next to each of the bodies inside of the lakeside home, which was engulfed in flames by the time that the firefighters were able to arrive. And little Abby's dad, Army Staff Sergeant William T., known as Terry Robbins, was shot and killed by a fellow soldier in Iraq in 2005 during a dispute over alcohol. And his mom went on to adopt the little girl. So she was the grandmother biologically, but she was technically the little girl Abby's mother. And they were saying that it looked like Abby had been in therapy. She was having a hard time dealing with her father's death. And to think about how much the grandmother was in pain that she killed herself and her little innocent granddaughter is just so sad. You know, neighbors and family members just said that There was no clue, that they had no idea that this was going to happen. And I'm mentioning that because we're talking tonight about sexual assault and about how people need to get help. And for all of us who have suffered a really close death, we know how difficult it is to deal with. And there are some who are not as emotionally equipped to deal with the death. So anybody who's watching tonight, if you know someone who has lost a loved one, keep an eye out on them. You know, we all need to be supported. I did not feel that I had the support that I needed through the loss of my husband, and I know a lot of other people have not felt that way either. So we can be there for one another and look out for one another to prevent something like this from happening. So, oh, I see Diane's here. Hello, Diane. That's so great. And then I see Nyla says that even those who have faith, the grief can be devastating. And that's true. You know, you think when you have faith and you believe in heaven and you believe that you're going to see your loved one again, that sort of helps you deal with the pain. But that doesn't keep you from being emotionally off to the point of harming yourself or someone else. I see that Sandy says some people just shut down and they don't share. And Sandy is saying how lucky that we've been. Oh, and she says, you know, from Camp Widow, which is where we met, all of the widow blogs, she says, kudos to me. Thank you, Sandy, for that. You know, we do have a support system intact. And we have to be really careful to look out for one another. Now, I'm laughing. Amy was saying to Diane that she loved the bird stories. You know, we're all about critters here on Rob and Craig Live, and whether it's a bird or a frog, which was my critter update tonight, or my cat, who you may be able to see, she's sitting right over here to the side. We're all about the critters, and yes, they make us smile, and that's the most wonderful, wonderful thing of all. So, and yes, Sandy, it is true that we give each other hope by sharing our pain. And Doug says, hi, Indigo Sherry. Can you say hi to Doug? Huh? Can you guys see her? She's just the cutest thing sitting there. Let me adjust the camera. There she is. Isn't that cute? Indigo Sherry wanted to come by and see us. How you doing, girl? Yeah, it's too cute. All right, guys, let's get Fuzzy on the phone. Hello, Fuzzy. How are you?
Hi, Robin. Glad to be interacting with you and your audience also.
Good. Everybody's been looking forward to your presence tonight. And, you know, we cover so many topics on the show, and sexual assault is a really hot topic, but so many people are afraid to discuss it and afraid to talk about it. And I think that's one of the problems with our society. We want to sweep traumatic incidents under the rug, but yet we suffer because of that.
And it's realizing that if an individual has been assaulted um, physically, mentally, or emotionally, a lot of times they don't want to talk about it because they're embarrassed, they're ashamed it happened to them, and also they feel if they bring it up, people will shun them or it will be a stigma that will isolate them from family, friends, and relationships. Individuals are reluctant to identify it. So it's what we have to do is learn to start looking for some of the signs.
Yes. Now, you had told me over the phone that sexual assault is any form of sexual behavior that is not consensual.
Yes, it is.
And you described it as being a wound. We all know what wounds look like. And we know that if you get shot, for example, or if you have surgery or you have trauma to the body, there is some sort of a physical scar or a physical wound that we can see. But you described sexual assault as being an invisible wound.
Yes, sexual assault is an invisible wound, just like post-traumatic stress due to an accident or a death, um, traumatic brain injury. Sexual assault leaves scars, and what we could say that it actually does is damage living tissue in the body.
Okay. And that's interesting because we think of mental things. When you're assaulted sexually, the mental trauma that you have, most people think you heal from the physical part. You know, whether you were raped or whether you were beaten up or whatever it was that's happened to you, most people tend to think, well, you heal from that part. And then you just have this little mental thing, but you should be able to control that. What do you say to people who say that?
Well, what happens is there's physical scars, mental scars, emotional scars, and the scar may heal, but situations, events, and relationships has a tendency to reopen those scars. What we do, we can get to a point in our lives if the event happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. We have to realize that are we still a victim? Is it still ruling our lives? Or is it playing in the background and it no longer affects us? We have to get to the point of addressing the issues, the causes, what occurred, what was our role, what's our responsibility now to say that I'm no longer a victim. I no longer will allow this person, this perpetrator, or this situation or event to rule or control my life.
Okay, and I wanted to mention too that for those of you who are watching the show, Fuzzy is a clinician, a therapist, an author, and a speaker. And I want to put his website up because some of you may want to contact him. I had a gal that contacted me on Facebook today, and she was asking me some questions that I was not capable of answering. So I told her she might want to tune into the show tonight and to contact Fuzzy after the fact. So I'm going to put up his website. He does a lot with post-traumatic stress disorder, and he's been on the show before in that regard. And I was amazed after we did that show to hear how many people who are widowed suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder because of the way that their spouse died and perhaps witnessing it. So, Fuzzy, I'm delighted to have you back. Now, and thank you for serving our country in Vietnam. I cannot ever say that enough. I really appreciate you so much for that.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay, so now we talked about a lot over the phone. One thing that a lot of people are concerned about, and especially those who are widowed, they are now single parents. In a two-parent family, a lot of times the kids are able to be supervised a lot more because you've got two parents who are splitting up all the jobs. When you become a single parent, sometimes for a widow, for example, she has to go back to work and her kids are spending more time alone. How can you tell? What are the signs if a child has been sexually assaulted?
Usually, there's a couple different things. Usually, their appetite changes dramatically. Either it's a starvation mode or they actually go into what you could say is gorging themselves. They can be involved in anorexia, bulimia. And also, what we have to pay attention to is their anger. And it says picks up. And so they're more aggressive. Is that they're more aggressive towards themselves, to others, and they have an inability to really be in a situation or event or in an environment and feel comfortable. Also, they have a tendency to want to be alone, isolated. And they have a tendency to be more tired, in a sense. They have fatigue. They can sleep, but they're not rested. And often individuals will be sleep deprived. So it's a lot of different issues that are going on simultaneously, and these are just a few clues up front that you can see that are visible.
Okay. And if you're seeing any of these signs, you said that a lot of people who are sexually assaulted will overeat or become bulimic. What is that about?
Bulimic, either bulimic, anorexic, or obese, you're punishing the body. The pain is so great that you're punishing you because you feel that you're a victim. You will never get over it. So it's continual punishment. If I see someone that is struggling with weight loss and they tried every and anything, and over a period of maybe 20 years, 25 years, then I start looking what's underneath, what's preventing the weight loss. If they're really going after losing it and they're committed, and it's why is the weight hanging on? And a lot of times too is the weight is insulation. It protects you. It prevents you from getting into that situation again, because individuals feel that if I'm obese or if I'm anorexic or bulimic, no one will attack me again.
So it's sort of a mental thing that says if I don't look my best, I will not be attractive to others. Therefore, I'm protecting myself from sexual assault occurring again.
Yes. Also, too, what you're doing is you're isolating yourself from the other relationships in your life.
Okay. All right. Now, if a parent thinks that their child has some of these symptoms, what should they do?
What you want to do is, rather than confront the child, also it could be a mother, a grandmother, a grandfather, a grandson, not necessarily women. So what you want to do is approach them and just identify. I noticed that, certain behavior, you seem to be eating more than you used to. You seem to be more angry. You seem to be more isolated. You don't seem to be able to get the sleep that you need. Is there something that's changed in your life? A lot of the times, too, when you're interacting with the individuals, listen more than talk, and also be aware that you have to listen without prejudice and without judgment.
Okay, we got to stop right there. How many parents do you know that can listen to a child without prejudice or judgment?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, and I mean, as the parent, you want to guide your kids. And when you see them doing things, you just want to say, here's what you need to do. But how do parents go about listening and just being quiet and being supportive and getting the child to open up? I mean, that's hard.
It's hard for parents and child. It's hard for spouses, partners, relationships on the job. Any type of interaction we have with human beings, it's difficult. We have 2 ears, but often what we want to do is jump in and, well, this is my idea, this is my thought process. Well, I think you want to do this. We aren't listening to what the individual is saying, and also we're not listening to what they're not saying.
Okay. All right. I see everybody's talking. One of our guys, one of our widowers is looking at your site on his iPad. I've got it up on the screen, but for purposes of the archived show, the things that I type on the Chiron don't show up. So Fuzzy Manning is who I'm speaking to. If you want to be his Facebook friend, he's under Ed Manning, Manning, and his website is P as in Paul, T as in Tom, S as in Sam, treatment.com, ptstreatment.com. And tonight we are talking about sexual assault. So, Fuzzy, why is it that in our society today, where really there are virtually no topics that people feel that we can't discuss, why is it we don't hear people talking about sexual assault?
Sexual assault is something that happens that separates individuals, isolates them. Individuals feel shame, they feel guilty this happened to them.
Okay.
They just want to be alone because why would this happen to me? It's a topic that it's embarrassing for the victim. And it's also embarrassing for the victim because if you go forward, you go to the hospital, you get interviewed by the police department, and you get a hold of a lawyer, you're on trial.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because you're the victim.
And I don't know why we can't change that in society. In addition to all of the things that I am, everybody knows I'm a TV producer, but I'm also a paralegal. And I will never forget many, many, many years ago working on a case where a flight attendant had been sexually assaulted. And in the courtroom, the opposing counsel said to her, "Don't you work for that airline whose motto is, 'We move our tail for you'?" I mean, can you believe that?
Yes, and I remember an airline that just started out in Houston in the 80s, early 80s. They were flying from Houston to Dallas, and the only prerequisite, they had a free flight. They did the special for, I think it was 3 days on and off. You show up at the Houston airport, and also you could show up at the Dallas airport. Basically, just go through the basic scanning devices. Make sure you're taking a bomb on board the plane. And the only prerequisite is you had to kiss the stewardess. This was Love Airlines.
Oh my!
And I was surprised the number of individuals that would not do that.
I know. I know. I mean, some things are kind of cute and funny, and then other things people just take the wrong way. And, it seems like we're also worried about being politically correct, whatever the heck that means, that we're overlooking the issues and we're failing to communicate and to talk about them like we should. And as a result, people are not even reporting sexual crimes. You quoted some statistics to me the other day about sexual assault and how many are not reported.
It's a tremendous amount. We're looking at probably across the board sexual assault around the world. We're looking at probably in excess of 2 million individuals annually.
Yes.
And these are the ones that are reported.
I see Sandy in the chat room is saying that there are definitely negative messages that do go out at times referencing "you asked for it" or some such inference. And that's very sad and very wrong because, we did talk about, you said that victims have a tiny bit of percentage of fault, like maybe 2%. And when I first heard that, like I'm sure some people hearing it now are going to say, no, the victim never has any percentage of fault. But explain what you mean by that, because when you talked about it, I got it.
If we start looking at the concept, if you have a discussion with a young girl that's starting to date, maybe she's dating a couple of months or maybe 6 months, and you ask her, when did you know that Tom was a dud on the first date? And they say, about 3 seconds into it. Okay, did you stop the date or did you pursue it? Well, I thought I'd give him a second chance. We have a body instinct within us. It's called our emotions and our feelings. We need to believe in that and go with it. Individuals that go down dark alleys or in situations with family members they don't like, they don't respect, you have to be aware of that message. Your body's trying to connect with you. It's telling you you're uncomfortable. It's a bad situation. It's a bad event. Take heed of that.
Yes.
Do something.
Yes.
Don't expect the situation's going to turn around and it's going to be acceptable.
Yes.
Get advice. Go find a parent. Go find somebody that's going to listen to you. And you're going to have to sit down and explain to somebody what's going on, what your thought processes are, and have them be open to hearing you.
Okay, and you're talking about that little feeling that we get that says, don't get in that car, don't go to that person's house, don't take a drink from that person, I don't feel safe, something just doesn't feel right, even though you can't pinpoint it.
Yeah, we need to start paying attention to that gut feeling
Yes,
that we know that occurs,
yes,
and we just kind of brush it off to the side. Well, I can overcome that, or it's not that bad, or maybe I got the wrong message. You
yes,
got the right message.
yes,
Now you need to take action.
yes. Because we just somehow talk ourselves out of that feeling so often to our own detriment. And I'm sure, in your line of work, you probably talk to people every day that had an inkling, but they didn't heed the warning, and then something bad happened.
Yes, on an ongoing basis, and it's a realization too
Yes,
that if you're assaulted or raped, and you feel, well, it was a family member, or it was a distant relative, or it was a stranger, and I was away from home. I didn't want to rattle my family. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do that. Not coming forward and dealing with that ends up 20, 30 years ago, it looks like, and probably ends up to be ovarian cancer, breast cancer, prostate, heart disease, fibromyalgia, bulimia, diabetes, a lot of different issues. It manifests. It's all. You could say that if you had a pond that overrun its banks on one side and it was always clear, you dam up that pond and it becomes stagnant, and nothing in that pond grows or stays
yes,
alive. The same thing happens with you. When you bottle up those emotions and feelings, you're cutting off the life process within you, and you end up getting sick and acquiring cancer, fibromyalgia, heart disease, strokes.
gosh.
You put on excess weight, diabetes. Things do happen. There's a physical connection.
And I don't think a lot of people even consider that, because we look around and there are so many people who are sick. Just since you and I had this conversation about sexual assault, I look at all kinds of people now who are having all these different issues, and I now look at them and say, I wonder if perhaps they were sexually assaulted and they never dealt with it, and now they're suffering a lot of physical repercussions.
Or that they were maybe sexually assaulted, abandoned. Um, they were beaten. They were in foster care, adoption system. They were
Yeah.
traumatized in some way.
Yes. Yes. Yes, and we don't make the connection, but that's why this show is so important. When you see people with physical issues, maybe it's time to have that non-judgmental, I'm a good listener conversation that I think so many people are starved for, but really have difficulty getting. Because that's amazing. Like, once somebody develops a disease because they have not dealt with sexual assault, can they go to therapy or counseling, deal with the assault issues, and get well?
You're looking at what stage the disease is. You're also
Okay.
looking at are they willing and ready and able to open up that dialogue. A lot of individuals say, well, I can open it up, or I'll talk about it, but I won't won't talk about the incident itself.
Okay. And why won't they talk about the incident itself?
It's because it's so painful.
Okay. But then when you bottle it up, that's where the problems seem to stem from.
Yes, and what you have to actually talk with an individual and say, okay, we're going to talk about the incident. And from a standpoint, you're going to be a bystander now. You're no longer the child. You're no longer that individual that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Okay.
And it's almost like standing on the other side of a plate glass window where you can see in the inside. It's kind of like the cop shows where you can see inside, they can't see you. And you're observing that, what happened. And if you're able to do that, you're able to peel away the layers and see what happened, what occurred, who played a role in that. Even those individuals that were not in the room or the environment that you interacted with, you start realizing that the story that you're holding on to maybe didn't happen exactly the same way you remember it.
Okay. That's interesting as well. I guess you can get something that's stuck in your head and it's not even accurate.
Yes, because we're traumatized because of the event, and you could say that we're in a fight or flight mode. We want to fight back, or we just want to get out of there. So it's a situation that we don't want to look back upon because it's so painful. But the only way to move forward is you have to look back and you have to start dealing with what occurred, what the story is, what your role or responsibility was in it.
Well,
and get that story straight. Now we can start peeling away the layers and saying, how is this affecting you today?
Yes. Now, I see, Fuzzy, that one of our widows in the chat room is saying that she was molested at age 13 by her brother-in-law, but nobody believed her. So she said she made many bad choices, but did turn out okay with many good counselors and faith in God. That's another story about people not believing that something like that happened when it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's from a standpoint that I deal with a lot of veterans, and we're looking at today female veterans in the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, National Guard, Coast Guard, and Reserve units. There are 19,000 sexual assaults annually within the military.
I was just looking, and Amy in the chat room was saying that sexual assault is just running rampant in the military. And you're saying 19,000 sexual assaults every year in the military. Why is it so rampant among members of the military?
There's a couple different answers or ways of addressing that. Company commanders do not want it on the record that somebody was sexually assaulted in their unit, or that they have a predator in their unit.
Why? Is that considered?
This goes on their service record.
Is that a reflection of the leadership?
It's a reflection of the leadership, and it's a reflection of not taking responsibility, because the military covers up, and you don't know who those predators are. They could be in the military 1 or 2 years, or 25 or 30 years. The military has a tendency to hide their predators. So
I know that we talked a little bit about how when you go into the military, and you know this because you're a Vietnam vet, that when you go into the military, everything that you've been taught, they tell you to forget about because you've got to be reprogrammed in order to fight the enemy and to be prepared to shoot and kill people.
It, it's yes, and it's the next step forward because what you're taught in basic training and in the combat environment, you're taught is that your enemy is less than human.
Okay.
And if we start looking at individuals in Iraq and Afghanistan, they're slope heads, they're camel jockeys, cow heads. Vietnam, it was gooks. So what happened is you had to be reprogrammed because you when you come into the military, you don't have an attitude or an approach to a situation that you're willing to kill or shoot somebody no matter what. So the military has to reprogram you, get that out of your head to get to the point you become an animal, you become a predator.
Okay, and I
now
can.
You're able to kill people and name them
Okay.
and have no consciousness about it.
Okay. And I think any of us who have not been in the military can fully understand that you've got to change the way you think in order to go off and kill people. So we understand that training, but then what happens though when you come home and you've got that new mindset?
What occurs when you come home, there's never any debriefing. There's no process that takes the veteran and says you're going back into a civilian life where they value life, they value children and women's rights, and they value animals. So you're going back into a loving, caring environment, but you're not coming from one. So the military doesn't do a darn thing. So what happens is we get Joe or Mary or Butch or Susie, and they go to a bar in their civilian community, and somebody aggravates them in the bar. Someone doesn't like who they are. So this veteran basically takes them out, either shoots them, kills them, breaks their arm. Now they end up in prison because of this incident. They could not control their rage, their anger.
Goodness, well, I see that Terry is in the chat room, and he says that his son is still working through just reprogramming, trying to reprogram after being in the military. But a lot, he said he went into a mental hospital for a while to get things worked out. Um, but does everybody have to go to a mental hospital when they come home, or is that just a very, very severe case of having difficulty dealing with the military?
What the military does is have a little questionnaire when you get ready to get out. You fill out the questionnaire, you talk to somebody 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on how many people are in the room, how many people they're processing. And it's a yes, no. If you have any questions or concerns, well, geez, we'd like to hold you longer. We'd like to have you stay in the military longer so we can check this out. Or actually, we'll send you down to the VA hospital. Here's a recommendation. Here's a slip. Here you show up at a certain date and time. If you're coming out of the military, you don't want to be held back. So basically, what you're going to identify is, well, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not bleeding. I'm not crazy, and I love my mom, and I love the apple pies, and I interact with my friends, family, relatives, my sister, Facebook, Skype, and whatever else when I was in the military. So this must be, I'm okay.
And you know, that's like a gigantic catch-22 Because I know some people in the military who have said, I'm having night sweats, I'm having nightmares, I'm having issues, but I don't report that when I go in to talk to my counselor because I really don't want to be penalized and have that on my record because of a lot of different reasons, not being promoted, et cetera, et cetera. So what do we have to do to overcome that?
It,
I mean,
it's realizing all of us have stigmas in our lives. Um, we have situations and events that we regret, but what we do is we interact with other people. We get over it. We see that this is not a repeated thing in our lives, and we regret that this occurred. And how do I correct this from reoccurring? And we have an open dialogue process. The problem is that veterans go into the military and come home. The community, neighborhoods, and families are traumatized, even though they're not at the battlefield. We have to start realizing that mom and the kids are just as traumatized as the veteran. Also, a lot of individuals and communities, that what we've done over a period of time is that women are not safe to walk alone in any park, any open place. They have to walk in groups, always be in a car. What we've created is fear-based society.
yes,
because of a lot of things that happen
yes.
overseas and in our country also.
And you said that when people are sexually assaulted, that a lot of times these fears are handed down to the next 5 or 6 generations.
Yes, and unless someone is willing to break the cycle, let's say mom or dad is sexually assaulted. What happens is you're living in an environment where an individual is traumatized. They have certain behavior, characteristics, mannerisms that you have to live with and cope with in a survival situation as a child. Now, what happens is you become an adult. You pass on those characteristics and behaviors to your children. And if someone doesn't break that cycle, it goes for 3, 4, 5, 6 generations until someone starts realizing this needs to end. I don't need to have an alcoholic family. I don't need to have a drug-related family. I don't need to have an obese family. I don't need to have a family that has an early death rate at 45 or 50 years old.
Yes, yes. And it's just got to be so difficult for people because you can understand the military's position. If they are notified that someone is having a problem or having some kind of an issue, then it's quite clear that they have to be very careful and not put this person in a higher position or in a setting where they may harm themselves or harm someone else or fall apart. So we understand that they have to be careful, but it's also sad to think that we have people who have served our country that don't feel safe in really saying what's going on with them. That's just really sad.
And this has been going on um, for a long, long time. This goes back to George Washington when he fought the Revolutionary War. Uh, this goes back thousands of years, and it really hasn't changed that much because individuals coming home from war, they feel it's a stigma against them if they identify.
Yes.
This happened in the battlefield. This or individuals at home. This happened with me. I was assaulted. It's a stigma against me. People are reluctant to identify the trauma within them.
Yes, it's the craziest thing. Well, Fuzzy, when do family members know that their loved one needs professional help? When is it something that time will make things better, and when do you actually need to get professional help?
I would say that once you determine that the um, eating problems, eating issues, the anger issues, the loneliness, isolation, the tiredness issues, the lack of sleep, once you determine that there's a reasonable answer to that, it's great. Then you can probably iron out a lot of that, within the family. But if you're seeing that your interaction with them, individuals don't want to talk, don't want to share anything, um, they're wanting to isolate themselves further, they become chronically depressed, that's probably a good time when you can't get through to them to seek a professional. Also, too, is that you have to be able to interact with the individual. Are they telling me the truth when they're relating information to you?
Okay, I'm watching the chat room. They are just talking like crazy. And Sandy says that we need to educate our young people. She works a lot with teenagers, and she reminds the girls that they cannot change a guy, and a guy won't change a girl if they're violent towards them. That it's not something that is, you can just say, hey, don't ever do that again. If a guy is violent towards a woman, there is an issue, and that it can easily happen again, because a lot of people stay in a bad situation when the person that they're with is not really bad. They've just got an issue that has not been dealt with, or maybe they've been in the military and they've not been deprogrammed.
What happens is those aren't really issues that happen on and off. Those are lifestyle choices. Those are learned behaviors.
Yes. And it's just happening. I mean, I just can't believe everybody that's experienced this firsthand. Cherry in the chat room said that his wife was sexually abused and raped by her brothers and stepfathers as a kid, and that she made it her life goal to break the chain of abuse, and she succeeded. He said she was a fabulous mother. It's so great to hear something really positive coming from something that is so negative and just so hurtful. Goodness. Well,
Yeah, and it's hard for us to realize too that sometimes due to trauma, we become a different person. We become a unique individual that aspires to do more, to be more. Individuals that maybe have been assaulted, abandoned, or neglected, maybe go into social work, maybe become a doctor that prevents that in the future, or an
yes.
individual that writes books and tours and lectures to let people know that this does occur and we need a solution.
Yes.
So it's sometimes the trauma creates a situation that actually benefits a lot of us.
Yes, and I love that, because it's just like I would not be doing this work that I'm doing if I had not been a widow. And the good part that can come from people being sexually abused is that perhaps they will become counselors or teachers or therapists or social workers, people that can help others who have dealt with that. And obviously they can relate to them better than anyone because they're speaking from the voice of experience, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, I would not want to talk to anybody about alcoholism if they had not dealt with that issue.
Yes, yes, and somehow I think it's the same way with being widowed. You like talking to people who have walked that path, and when you see that they're doing okay, you feel better, because no matter what people say to you when you haven't been widowed, it seems that widowed people are offended, like you really just don't understand, or you wouldn't have said what you've said, even though the person speaking is not saying anything intentionally bad. But that's just the way we are as humans. When you get an illness, you want to speak to somebody who has had that illness and recovered from it. You want to hear their stories. So the same thing with being sexually assaulted. It helps you to speak to someone who has been through it, and certainly if they have worked through it and figured out a way to bring meaning to their life by working in a field where they can share their own personal stories. That's so great. Well, I tell you, Fuzzy, tonight has been an amazing topic, and I really knew that the hour would pass quickly. I had no idea that it would pass this quickly. We could talk about it some more, and I think that we'll have to do that. But you're just so great, and I hope that people who are suffering will contact you, and even if you just talk to them and give them some guidelines, or maybe you refer them to an organization or a nonprofit that might be able to help them. All of your assistance is so appreciated. And for those of you who are watching the show, I'm talking to Ed Manning, Manning. He is known as Fuzzy, Fuzzy. Isn't that cute? And I've got his website up, ptstreatment.com. You can also friend him on Facebook, and if you have a hard time finding him, just let me know. He is one of my Facebook friends. You can find him on my site. So Fuzzy, honey, thank you so much for being here. You are a wealth of information. I love you to pieces, and you got to promise to come back.
Not a problem, Rob. Love to come back and love to support what you're doing and the great work that you're involved with.
Thank you. You're the best, and if I can do anything for you, you know where to find me. All right, sweetie, you have a great evening, and thank you again.
You too, Rob.
Goodness gracious, that's such an amazing topic, and you guys are just really touching my heart by sharing your stories, your own personal stories, and the stories of your loved ones. And it just reiterates what a problem sexual assault is. And we as a society have got to stop sweeping it under the rug. We've got to stop telling victims that we don't believe you and that it didn't happen, but we need to be there and support them and to speak to them, as Fuzzy was saying, in a non-judgmental fashion. And without saying, well, why did you go off with that person? Why did you get in the car with him? But to just listen to them and get them to speak, because the problem seems to stem from, as Fuzzy was saying, by people holding it in and not getting the help they need. And next thing you know, their body starts to go and they're suffering from all kinds of physical illnesses when they just really needed some professional help. So I love you guys so much. I am so grateful that you were with me tonight. And you know, I'm looking for you every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. if you are on the left coast, as I call it. Now, of course, I'm going to stay in the chat room so we can keep the dialogue going a little bit longer. And you guys know how to find me, robincraigdirect.com. Don't forget to go to my website. I'm giving away a case of Bean Itos, 9 bags. There are 6 servings per bag. They're so great. And I am giving away a case of these to the 10th person to send me an email at robincraigdirect.com. So don't forget to sign up because they are so good. I can't wait to eat these right after the show. All my friends say, Robin, I have a Benitos attack after every single show, but you can win and you can eat them during the show. So I love you to pieces. Stick around and talk to me in the chat room. And if you need me for any reason, you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Twitter, and also my website, robincraigdirect.com. And you know how to reach Fuzzy. If you need him and you can't find him, then just let me know. Indigo Sherry has got her best side to the camera. On behalf of myself and Indigo Sherry, we are signing off. Love you so much. Stick around. We'll keep the dialogue going.